Okay, so here we are. We're at the first ever Gestalt Media book chat, and we're going to talk with Ryen Lesli today about River. And this will be hosted by the talented David Allen Boyles,
So
who I'm sure has a list of questions prepared because that's how he rolls.
that's exactly right. Yeah. Yep. I have.
So I'll get out the way and I'll let y'all get started.
Oh well, that's all right. You can be the co-host and jump in because it really should be a chat, other than a. That's my idea anyway, just to chat about stuff and not just be a straight interview. But I do have questions because, as you said, I definitely come prepared with that. First off, I guess the place to jump off from is, I mean, this is such a cool universe that you've created for River and all of the folk in the ebb. I wondered, first of all, how the idea even came about in the first place.
Well, it was a dream several years ago, probably, I don't know, 2009, 2010. And I just woke up and I found myself standing in front of a book that's like as big as a building. And as I'm standing there, the pages start to turn and each page is a different world. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. Well, then they stopped on this world and all I see is emerald green. And at first, that's just all I see. But then I realize there's a girl standing there, and she's just looking at me, and she just holds her hand out. And so I stupidly take it, and she drags me into the book, and it slams shut. So then I see this crazy world that is, hard to believe. And then when I woke up, wrote it all down. But it wasn't until 2014 that I actually sat down and wrote the story. But it was building in my mind that entire time. So it was a dream.
So when did that happen? How long ago was that?
That was like in 2009, 2010.
Wow.
Probably 2009 I had that, yeah. Because then I went to Muir Woods 2012 and got to go into Muir Woods and see the park for the first time. And because up until then I didn't have a place for them to live, it was in the woods, but where I live, you can only enjoy the woods like a month, 2 out of the summer, and they had to be there all the time. And then it was just kind of like fate. The Warrior had a work conference, and I got to go out there and stay with my uncles who live in Belmont, and which is like 45 minutes from San Francisco. And they took me the first day to Muir Woods, and I just walked in. I thought, they live here. I get it. Okay. Even though my exposure to that was only like an hour and a half, but yeah.
Well, that's really cool. And that was something I really wanted to talk about, too. An echo like crazy. Are y'all hearing that, too?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. The whole geography of them is pretty interesting. And so I was curious about how much of what goes on in the ebb is possibly even viewable by humans. I mean, I know it's isolated. I know there's a mention that I guess it's the fair estate is what humans would have known about that we're actually aware of. That was kind of a resource, a reference place for them.
Uh-huh.
How does that fit in with like humans going there and yet there being all these other folk that are not human?
Well, in order to get an invitation to go to the fair estate, you have to, be someone pretty, important or smart. They had to have a liaison between the ebb and the outside because of some things which will come up later in the series. They have to have a place where the humans can come, and because there is a small number of humans that know about them. Because they do have to keep the peace, but in order to get in, a human just can't walk into the fair estates. It's like this distinguished library for just the smartest people, so they think, in the world. So you can see the fair estate. Sometimes you can get to visit it. You're not going to notice anything about the fairs. You're not going to notice anything different. You're not even going to see a lot of them. There's like a small group of people that'll take you in. Fairs will take you in, and you get to the library and stuff like that. Now, as for the Banyans clan, they don't see that. You go into Muir Woods, and the humans can go into the park, but it's hidden behind the palisade. So they could walk up to the fence, and they could even climb the fence and go on the other side, but they're not going to see any of it because there's this protective sort of palisade between it. And the only way a human can step onto the estate or onto the clan is if they're invited by somebody. They have to, it's kind of like a vampire. You have to invite a vampire in. It's kind of like that. Now the Cove is a little different. They're out in like the middle of the ocean, and while 99% of the time humans don't come across it, there is the occasional sailor lost on, with their boat, and they will help them find their way and move on. And then the Haven, you can't get there at all from the outside world. That has to be accessed from a shield inside one of the clans. It's like, you can't get there from here.
Yeah.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it does. What about the palace? The palace is actually, it's got to be fairly close to the estate, or actually estate's the human word for it, but the castle. Now, where Obsidian and Angel are, where is that?
Okay, so that's another place that you can't get to. You have to access it from the ebb, and I can't really give anything out about that yet because as the series progresses, River doesn't even know where it's at, and she suddenly finds out where it is because it's and you haven't read Fate, so I got to be careful here. It's all roads lead to the palace, and they don't realize that yet. But you can't get there from here. No human can ever find it. It's like in a different realm, like the Haven. You just can't find it.
Well, that's exactly what I was calling it. I wondered if most of it was another dimension type of thing. Definitely, it seems like when the palace and the Haven, those are like another realm or another dimension, almost.
Yes.
Okay, but the other two could stumble upon if they so happened.
Yes.
It would be a way.
Technically, yes.
Well, that's pretty cool, and that's with what I was wondering about. And terminology. At some point, I wonder, have you ever thought about a glossary? Or I know it'd be a pain in the butt to make.
Yes. No, there's one at the end of Fate, and I realized that it was getting so big. And there's a glossary, and then terms that you come across, and then a little bit of the history, which I will give out more and more and more as the series progresses.
Well, I think it's a brilliant device that you used to tell the story because through Rivers, I don't know how when you were pulled into the book and you kind of get, you had the dream about how to put it all together or what the story was, but it's a neat way to tell the story through River because she comes from our world and therefore if she learns, then we learn. So that's a great device, but it does mean that you discover along the way. So you're having to put things together, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I think that's really cool how we do that. But terminology was something like for a while, and I'm just a question to ask you. Like when you refer to the fairs are a generic term that covers a broad range, or is it more specific within this species, shall we say?
Well, I guess you could say there's three species, right? The fairs, the maids, and the witches, and they all are different from each other. Their power is different from each other. So, and any male that's born into whatever clan, they're a fair, they're a maid, and they're a witch. There's male witches. So, but of course, any male is automatically a warrior, and so whatever branch that he's with is what he becomes. But they are actually three separate creatures.
I see.
Did that answer your question?
Perfectly. And with at the cove, the warrior fighting.
I'm going to cut in for a second if you don't mind. First off, if we could lower the volume on one of your speakers is giving feedback, so it's kind of garbling it up a little bit.
Is that better? No.
I don't know until he starts talking again.
Okay, let's see if that does it.
It seems a little clearer.
Okay.
I got to be able to hear you. Let's see. Even when doing that, well, we'll see.
Okay. And we do have a question from a fan. So
I can't read it. I'm so blind. What does it say? Your favorite character in this series and why? Actually, my favorite character is probably going to surprise you, but it's Wicked. He's my favorite. He's my favorite to write about. He is based off of three people that have been in my life. Two different people that I have come across, and then me, oddly enough. But I do use I do use everybody around me. Absolutely. Everybody is in there at some point. You might not realize it's you because I'll give you a different name, but yeah, everybody's in there.
Cool.
There are some people from with my imagination too. I can hardly read that.
Oh, I'll put it back up there for you.
I'm so blind. No, I'm seriously really blind.
Wicked is a demon. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What that means?
A demon is just the warriors for the palace.
Okay.
But Wicked is a little special. Wicked and Ghost are special. And as this series goes on, you'll realize just how special. But he's actually the commander of the demons. I think I can say that without giving away too much. but he's pretty special. I know that everybody hates him, especially at what he did at the end of River, and he is awful that way. But I hope that answered the question with that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm glad they asked that question too, and why you like him, because you probably can't say a whole lot without giving away too much at that point. There was one little thing early in River though with Wicked, as he's with Angel, and she's drinking whiskey, and she pours spirit, spirit into that, knowing that he's like, it's like an addiction. Yes. Is there anything you can say about that you could reveal that would explain that a little bit?
Okay, so there's a couple parts to this. So before the ebb was torn down and the humans merged with the species of the ebb, there were the mermaids, the dryads, and the imps. They weren't the creatures they are. But then something happened that you find out in Fate that made the palisade just kind of come down around all the clans, and the humans saw them for the first time. So this caused an enormous kind of ripple through their time. And they managed to put the palisade back up, but the damage was done. They started merging with each other. They weren't supposed to do that. So it created birth defects within the new body that was born. And the glowing eyes is one of the birth defects. The creatures didn't have that before they merged with the humans. Just some weird random things, but the addiction is one of them. So you're not supposed to steal a spirit. You're not supposed to take a spirit of someone else. And the minute you do, you become addicted to it. It would be just like a human addicted to heroin. And he can't ever fight that. You can't ever fight the addiction when you're in your life. You have it until the day you die, which is why you shouldn't take the spirit or whatever. So Angel is sadistic because she knows that he can't fight that. And as the series progresses, you find out that he got that very early on. She really ruined him from a young age. The first time he drained a spirit, I think he was 6. So he's had the addiction his entire life, and it's one of the ways that she has that she can control him. And that there's 2 other things that the creatures can get. They can get the delirium, which is like what we would say like being bipolar or schizophrenia. You can't heal that, or the fever, which would be like the plague or something. I don't know. You're dead within 24 hours. So these 3 things they cannot heal, even though everyone has the power to heal, most of them. And it's just repercussions from merging with the humans when they weren't supposed to do that. Did that answer that?
Yep, it does. And I knew it was just a teaser of a sort, I thought, at that point when you first introduced that. How much of that did you have already laid out in your mind when you were starting the series? And then you said, I'm just going to give this little bit here and a little bit more here. Or did you say, it kind of grows and you think, I'm going to throw this in now? How much comes like on the spur of the moment, so to speak?
Well, the addiction was on the spur of the moment. I wanted, because I hadn't really figured out the whole history of them yet. And I wanted them to have something that, because they have power and they can do all these incredible things, but I wanted something that they couldn't fight no matter what they did. And we all know how bad addiction can be. And I just thought that was a perfect thing for, him to have to battle, him and Ghost, because Ghost has it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's more stuff there that I know that I'm looking forward to, because it was just piquing my interest. And I thought, well, I want to make sure that's something I want to know that's going to get developed. And I felt sure that it would be, but they're interesting characters, and their relationship with Angel. I mean, the way that she's manipulating them is pretty dark. I mean, it's really good and dark.
You don't know anything yet. Oh my God. She's one big bad bitch.
That's great. That's great. Well, I also wondered about, and I'd heard before, either in an interview or something where you mentioned coming up with this particular type of fantasy, and it's very unique. And one of the unique angles, and I was reading it again for the second time today, so it's kind of interesting to come back and revisit it before I've even gone on to Fate, just reading River again the second time. Your narrator, it's third person, but it really isn't what I would consider a traditional third person, because your voice, or that voice, often is very much like River's, even though it's not her voice. Was that a conscious choice to do? I mean, there are times that, like, for example, I think I got a quote here. It's pretty funny to me. I thought it was, in fact, it was hilarious. But like, there's a quote. This is the narrator's voice, not River's voice. It's saying River followed her mom, oh, sorry, also known as the fucking queen, as she swept through the doors. I mean, that's the narrator's thing. Tell me about your choice of using that voice as a narrator.
I don't really even think about it, to be honest. I just wrote a book that I wanted my daughters which they would read. And I knew what would keep their attention, and I knew what would, keep them reading. And I don't even really think about it. And it always surprises me when someone talks about the third voice and how sometimes it's not third voice, but it's like so deep third, you have to go back and read some stuff, because I just don't even think about it. It's just the way I write. I don't know. I honestly, there's no conscious thought about it.
Yeah, it does work. It caught me off guard a little bit at first, and then I really grew to like it, because what it comes across as, which I think, you might not get as the writer, you might have to listen to a reader that way. It comes across like someone telling the story rather than being this distant voice. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, and I also feel like it makes it more intimate between you and the reader when they're reading it. Again, I wanted to, pull my oldest daughter in, and because, she used to love to read when she was little, but then they hit middle school and all that goes out the window, and they're being forced to read books that she has no interest in, that are old fashioned from when I was in high school or middle school, and she has no interest. So her love for reading just falls by the wayside. And I wanted to make it to where she would read it and go, oh yeah, I get that, or start laughing. And I didn't want to, bog her down with too much detail. I didn't want to, bore her. In fact, when I first wrote River, I had her read through it and said, anytime your mind started to wander, just for a second, I want you to mark that for me so I can go back and rewrite it to where it'll keep your attention. And she did. She was quite brutal. And so I had to pretty much go back and rewrite the entire book. But, I just, it was all for her. But apparently it works. It seems to work. I don't know. I don't even think
was she at that point?
Huh?
How old was she
when she was probably, I think, a freshman in high school, going in her freshman year, because everything kind of changed for us. And excuse me, I have running nose. Damn allergies. Everything changed. She went from being our sweet Samantha to this big bad girl, and a lot of the things that River has with her mother, are kind of putting in from me and my own daughter's fights. And so she was just, I think, entering high school at the time. And there you go.
Yeah.
We have another question. So Colleen asked, to piggyback off David's question, are you a plotter or a pantser or a mix? And would you mind walking us through your writing process? Do you have advice for other writers?
I am a total 90% pantser, but because the series is so big, I do have to plot. Even though it's really hard for me to do that, because we talked about it before, River will just decide to take me on a whole different journey, and that totally messes up the plot. And so then I've got to scramble back to go to my outline and of the whole series and kind of work it in. But I'd say 90% pantser, totally, absolutely. And then my writing process is very sloppy. I would not recommend it to anybody. I am quite manic about it. I will go, and have an episode where I'll write for, 4 or 5 days, and I don't do anything else but that. I will sit at this desk for 12, 15, 16 hours. I don't care until my body just says you got to go to bed, and I will get up and do it over and over and over until the writing stops, because, it's not always there. And then I can take my time, go back, edit it, kind of make it pretty and stuff like that. Any advice for other writers? This is a very tricky question, because, I wouldn't tell people to do what I do. I mean, I do some pretty crazy things. I don't eat during the day. I eat bags of candy. I drink too much coffee. I listen to music constantly. I make myself cry as I write. And if I can make myself cry when I write, then I know it's good. And, it's really hard for me to cry because, I'm cold-hearted. But, advice for writers, just write. Get off the blogs, get off those articles telling you how to write, stop looking at other people for advice. Don't compare yourself to other writers. Just sit down and write, It's
put Twitter down.
What?
Put Twitter down.
Yes, put Twitter. Yeah, get off social media. That's the big one. Like when I'm in this mode, like I am right now, I don't go on social media. I haven't been on, as you guys know, it's too overwhelming for me, and I'll get distracted and I can't do it.
Yeah. So you listen to music while you write?
Yes. I cannot write without music.
That's weird. I can't write with music. So I can't write with anything. Like I've got to where if it's TV, I can kind of tune it out, especially if it's like sports or something that you don't have to pay attention to. But I can't, if there's anything, like if there's something I want to watch, or if there's music, if there's somebody talking in the room, I can't do it.
What about you, David?
Yeah, I can generally tune it out, but I don't put music on because my brain doesn't seem to function well if I want to pay attention to it. So if I like the music, especially if it's lyrics and I remember the lyrics and my brain doesn't seem to function well at then putting out my own words. So I'm fascinated about how you do that.
Well, I have always had a thing for music. I connect very emotionally and spiritually with music, and it's always been sort of a lifeline for me. I listen to everything but new country because I grew up in Texas, so I'm kind of with the oldies there, that old school stuff. But every character I have has their own music list, has their own personal song. Each book has their own music list, and I've trained myself that as soon as I put the music list on, I'm right there. It doesn't matter what's happening around me. As soon as I hear a song from one of the characters, I'm that person. And that took me quite a while to get to that because I have so many characters and they're doing so many different things. And so I had to separate each one when I was doing my character Bible. And I just started going through and finding songs for him. Wicked's song, I had his song before I had anybody else's song, before I even started the series. I would hear his song and it was just this constant and I could see him clearly in my mind. And I cannot write without music. The only time I do not have music on is when I'm reading the stuff back to myself.
Yeah.
But it helps me block everything else out. I get distracted so easily. And it helps me just immediately focus on the character and do what I got to do.
That's amazing. Yeah. Interesting how people have different processes for that. And obviously our brains are wired differently and different things happen. But I do find that kind of fascinating. There was a scene where Wicked is practicing like a duel, doing battle practice with a demon. And you mentioned there's dubstep music in the back, is playing. Yeah. So if you listen to human music, it's kind of interesting. It's like their music might be. I mean, you don't normally mention the music and.
And there's a reason for that too, because the first time I would sell River, and people would look at him like, you can't really have like pop culture references like that. You can't, really do that because the book's going to age. And there's a couple reasons why, and I can't tell you the main reason why I picked that and put that in there. But another reason was because my daughter hates dubstep. So it was really popular around the time I wrote the book. And so that was just kind of like her to go, okay, Mom. And so then River's reaction, she hears it in the second book and she's like, her reaction to it is hysterical. Just like a teenager would be like, okay, she's listening to dubstep. What the hell? Yeah. But there's a major reason why they have that. A lot of people have asked me, how could they even have it when they're not with the humans? But that's like a little teaser to show you that Angel actually roams back and forth between both worlds.
Yeah.
And so she happened to have the demon twins with her out one time and they heard it, and they don't have music like we have music here. They have like people playing guitar and it's kind of like this whole folksy sort of thing. And so the first time the twins heard it, they just fell in love with it because they never heard anything like it before. So that's another reason why they're always listening to it, especially Wicked, because he just loves the violence of it.
Yeah.
But later on, I tell you the main reason why that's there.
Well, again, and that leads perfectly to another question I had about this interaction between the worlds, about how much can people come from the ebb into the human world. I mean, obviously they came for a purpose, Wicked and Ghost did, but how much other is there that you can give away right now?
There, 99% of the ebb do not have any contact, have never had any contact with the outside world. They have the wisest who help the queen or king deal with the group from the outside world that know that they're there. They kind of work together to kind of make sure, world events don't get too crazy. And I'm trying not to give too much away, but the humans at one point knew about the ebb. And everybody knew about each other. I mean, the ebb obviously knows about the humans, but they just don't talk to them. But the humans at one point knew about the ebb. And then over time, their memories faded. It became like a little myth or a little legend or something like that, because River does start to open those barriers. And she doesn't really mean to at first, but she has to. And she starts bringing in humans into the ebb, which is going to cause quite an issue. And then she takes people to the outside world. And one of her wishes that I think I can reveal is that she wants to make it more open between the two worlds. She doesn't, the secrecy and, the humans have a lot of fear of people with power, where you have half of them that are like enthralled with it, but the other half are, think it's like a sign of Satan. And so River kind of wants to, push that into the ground, so to speak. So that will be one of her goals, to start getting them together again.
Oh, that's cool. That's real cool. I like that whole idea. And you've laid good groundwork for it, because her feelings have been made clear, because she's been able to show sympathy for when she's kind of angered by some comments that are made about humans. And she says, well, look, I lived that way for 12 years. I understand that. So I think you've done a good job of laying that out. And Jason, you're going to keep us on target with questions. I see just a minimum, but if I don't want to miss somebody's question if they've got one, but I've got that I can run with. So,
I'll jump in and I'll ninja kick into the conversation and ask them if they come along.
Okay, so if you see somebody that's typing a question in, please be sure to bring that up. Go ahead and interrupt. I wanted to ask too about this. Religion, I guess, is really what you'd call it, but at least the hierarchy of belief in the ebb. Because I was trying to get that. There's a real quick little lesson that River gets, but we're talking about you got a goddess at top.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was reference to Lola, her, and then the crone, which I haven't had yet much other than a reference to the crone that's coming up, but on an equal level with the queen. Is that correct?
Yes, which is why it confused what?
In terms of power.
Well,
or I don't know.
It's kind of hard to explain. So you do have the goddess, and they only have one goddess. They don't have, like here on the outside, they've got God, and everyone has different gods or whatever. There is only the goddess. And River, and I do make it seem like there is only the God in the outside world too. So because at some point, River has got to talk to both of them, to God too. So that's a bit of a traumatic experience for her as well. I mean, remember, she's in hell right now, so she's talking to Lucifer. She's had a really bad day, but so the goddess is the top, obviously, and then mermaids. Okay, so Lola was the mermaids were the most powerful under the goddess. They had the most power. It wasn't like they were her favorites. That's just kind of how it worked because of the water on Earth, and so Lola is the last one. So once she goes, or when she died, that sort of blanked out that whole line. Now, before we had witches, we had the imps, which were shy creatures, and they were just take spirits that were free from the bodies to the crossroads, so the head empress could take them on to the garden after she judged them. But now it's turned into they're the witches, and they have a lot more power than than the species they came from. And again, that was just, I didn't really mean to happen, but it's just kind of how it worked out. But the crone is under the goddess now. She's the one that has the most power under her. But she is, every time a spirit dies, they go to her. And so she judges them before she lets them move on to the garden with the goddess or whatever. And you find out who her mate is or who the goddess's mate is in Fate. And I can't tell you too much. I do go into it in more detail about their job in Fate. And then you have the queen. Now, the only reason why we have a queen is because they mimic the humans. So the humans always had a king or a queen, right? Down through the ages. And so they wanted to blend in with the humans. So they decided they were going to pick a king. So it would be on equal footing with the humans. And so that's the only reason why they have that. So it's literally just for show. Beth doesn't want it to be just for show. She wants to kind of take the power that the crone has. And, maybe she'll do that. I don't know. She's kind of dark. But yeah, so, and River questions that, why have, the kingdom anyways? What's the point of that? Like, because when Autumn tells her in the garden that, the good vegetables are going to the castle for the queen, the perfect ones. And River's like, what do you mean? They're the ones that get all that stuff. And even in the ebbs in their mind, they've been bred into that, the kingdom, whatever the king or queen says is law. We have to do that. And so River, she's going to mess that one up too.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question? I have a tendency to ramble.
No, that's great. Yep, you did. And I'm fascinated with that kind of stuff. And I can see ultimately this is going to go on. You got 10 books planned, and then Tolkien had what, the Silmarillion, where he explains all the different stuff. I can see you having a book that's nothing but here's how all this stuff works. You know,
Oh yeah.
people that will be anxious to read that. So that'll be a task where you have to do at some point. Here's a little tiny technical question. I'm curious about the name Beth. When we had so many different kinds of names in the web, like River and just all sorts of different things, and that one seemed like kind of a common mundane name. Was there any story behind that or a thought?
Well, her mom named her Elizabeth, and her mom actually, and you find out, and I can't give too much away, but her mom actually had come across a book, a human book, and the character in it was Elizabeth. And so she wanted to be different in a world of, everyone has unique names. She wanted to be even more different. So she gave her daughter a human name. So it's, it's just, River will find that out too. But her mom had a book. She got her hands on a forbidden book she shouldn't have had, and the character's name was Elizabeth. And she just thought that was amazing, and nobody else had that name.
Yeah.
So in their world, that's like Hermione.
Yes. I mean, there are like pretty basic names in there, but most of the time, everyone has some pretty crazy names. And I know people have asked me why River and Sky, why I picked those two names, but I can't give that away either. So, not everything is as simple as it seems.
Yeah.
There is a reason for each name that is given.
I kind of had a feeling that was the case. So you can see that. I also am intrigued. Well, let me go back up to this question. I teased you when we had a writers group meeting not too long ago, had a chat online, that I wanted to ask you if River, as a character, almost like a child, does River ever piss you off, even though you've written her?
I've had other people ask me this question, or they've said River pisses me off, and I'm going, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why would you ask that? Why did you want to ask that?
I did get frustrated with her, but I get frustrated with both her and Wolf, of course, that whole back and forth thing. And I'm not a romance fan. I mean, I don't read romance novels. And there's an element of that I think would really appeal to a lot of romance. The whole frustrating relationship, it's got to be part of the story and everything. But it does. The first time reading it, she irritated me at times more than it did the second time, which I'm not sure exactly why that was. Maybe because I had more insight, even with just the one book by the end of the novel than I did at the beginning. So I'm not sure, but then I just had the feel, it made me think about characters that I've had too, like, do they sometimes get on my nerves? Even though I've created them to be this way, they take on a life of their own that sometimes surprises you.
River is a very complicated person. And again, you haven't read Fate, but I'm going to give a couple of spoilers here. River is stuck in the body of a 17-year-old, right? Yeah. And she's lived the last 12 years as a human. So, she should know how to use her power. Once Wolf claimed her again, she should have gotten all her memories of them back. She did not. She is frustrated with the whole male-dominated aspect of that. She's not okay with it, even though later on she realizes that, all the big people are all female, Queen, my big bad bitch or whatever. So River is dealing with so many things, and she doesn't understand how she could just come from her outside world, which is where she really thrived in. Well, she felt like she thrived in. And then they put her back in the ebb. Her mom abandoned her. Nobody explained anything. They just said, oh, it's all going to come back to you, because they just assumed it would. But she never got any more answers. And then Wolf, he was being a dick and refused to come see her. He had his own issues because he knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew what he was supposed to do with River. He knew he was supposed to claim her so she could get those memories back, because they do have a purpose. But the last 12 years they just broke him, because she left when he was so young. And in this third book, because a lot of people are like, well, he was a kid, what could he be going through? In the third book, I actually take River through him at that age. So you do see the god-awful stuff that he had to go through, which made him why he was what he was. So River has all this stuff coming down on her. Everyone expects her to be this hero. She doesn't even know what that means. And she's in a 17-year-old body, but really her spirit is, eternal. I don't know if I can say that. This is her and Wolf's fifth lifetime together. So, her spirit knows what it's supposed to do, but her mind is really kind of holding her back. And and also being suppressed for so many years. No one's ever done that before, because River's spirit, and her mom talks about it a little bit, her spirit was so strong, she kept having to suppress her. Each time she suppressed her, it kind of messed with her mind. You know, it always reminds me of on Men in Black. You remember that movie? And he'd always hold that little thing out, and then he's like, would you stop doing that? You're going to like hurt her, whatever. Every time her mom did it, it damaged River more and more and more. And so, because even now people are like, well, don't you remember that? And she's like, no, she has no memory of it. So, you know, slowly through the series, she'll start getting it back, and it'll come in rushes, or she'll have to figure stuff out. And Fate, you know, I really go into that. So that'll explain that more. But I don't dislike River at all. At all. I feel bad for her. Because I just keep doing all this bad stuff to her, and it's just going to get worse. I just figured something out about her today, though, which kind of explained, because I was thinking about your question, because I knew you were going to ask that. And I realized what she really is today, and it was kind of like one of those aha moments. And I couldn't tell anybody about it because, you know, it's this huge, massive spoiler that I just figured out, and kind of explain the whole thing to her. And when we go like private after this is live, I'll tell you what it is, because, you know, I can tell you.
Cool.
But no, she doesn't anger me at all. I know that I was actually kind of surprised when people said that she annoyed them at first with the back and forth with Wolf. And I'm like, but, you know, you got to think, you know, she doesn't have her girls anymore with her. She's got these other girls, but they're so different from her. You know, they just accept their stuff. And she's been taught that you don't have to accept it. She's a woman. She's got her voice. And so she's kind of struggling with all that. And she's kind of scared of Wolf. She's kind of scared because her spirit knows what it's supposed to do, and she doesn't like that at all.
Yeah.
And I go more deep into that in Fate.
Yeah. Well, I can do that. There's a real interesting dynamic because of a number of things. One is just being set, like he said, being in a 17-year-old body, and so just the 17-year-old boy and girl thing. You know, I taught high school for 30 years, so everybody's drama coming in the door.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, give me a break. And yet I'd have to actually act more sympathetic than that. I didn't give them a hard time about it. But so when I read it, it's like, oh God, here we go with those. But they're real. They do that. I mean, that's not like you were creating it for the first time for her to go through that stuff.
Oh yeah.
But her back and forth with Kat, you know, and it's, you know, even in that whole business, which brings me to my another question about the whole event at the claiming. I think you kind of touched on this just a few minutes ago about the whole male-female relationship here. And it is kind of a matriarchal society, but yet you still have guys dominating. So at the claiming, how cool or uncool is it when you got, you know, a warrior grabbing a woman and throwing her over the shoulder and off he goes? I mean, River speaks fast, right?
Yeah. And again, I got to be very careful what I say, but like in this third book, I start to show that while the warriors think that they run this place, you start to see, because I have a couple more couples come in, and River starts to notice that actually it's the female who kind of controls everything, and they're just like this big arrogant person. But then as soon as they, the female says something, like, okay, we can do that, so because I have had anger people about that, how in this day and age we shouldn't have that. And I'm like, but that's the point. It's so different from our world. They're not human, and that's how they were raised. And River's just going to mess all that up.
Yeah, and I felt like you're still going to go somewhere with that. That you are by far not done with that.
No. Because I do bring in another character that is shocked in this third book, that is completely shocked by this way of life. And she's, oh shit, I should have said that. It's a female. I can't say too much, but she gives people an even harder time than River does. River was raised a princess. She can't ignore that fact. So she does have a little bit of, she does kind of refrain sometimes from just cussing someone out or whatever. This other person is not going to have that. So they're going to be, very blunt about this whole claiming business and how it's not okay, and telling the other females that they don't have to wait around for, a warrior to ask them to go roaming or something, and so she kind of causes a pretty big problem with the, people that her age, because the girls are suddenly like, wait a minute, wait, we don't have to do that. And so it kind of causes this huge divide between the teen warriors and the teen females. It's really kind of cute. It's really kind of funny, but
that's great. I think it's a neat way to look ahead at what's coming in a couple of books. It's got to be intriguing. I hope people, I don't know how many people catch us live, but at the very least, if we can post about this and have it up so people can find it, I think a lot of your readers are going to be real intrigued with what's coming and the ideas that are coming. I want to talk about too, and I'm sure how our time is, but I want to talk about the element of horror, because I'm a horror writer and I love the element of horror that I saw introduced here. And I have heard you say that there may even be much darker more horror that's coming up soon. But
yes.
To me, one of my favorite things, and I don't want you to spoil anything here, so we'll be real careful about that. And I'll try to be careful about asking about it, but I'll just put it out there as a teaser for people to find if they haven't even gotten as far in River. But when River goes to the palace and she goes into the keepsake room, that's great. That's really great horror. I just love that whole part. If I'm going to go back and read it again when we're finished, because I was rapidly getting to that point again, and I didn't get to savor it the way I wanted to. Is there anything about that you can share about how that came about, what was going on in your head, and what you wanted to convey?
I didn't just want it to be just a regular fantasy, good versus evil or whatever. I wanted to bring in a scare factor. I had a really bad dream. I had written River, and it was like a year later. I had written the outline, and I had put on that chapter the details, kind of an outline. I hadn't gone in and filled the chapter in yet. And then I had this dream that I was in this room, and there were all these cases of these dead animals in it, and it was really freaky. And I just immediately put that scene. That's exactly what I was looking for, because I wanted it to be, again, River's reactions to it, are kind of funny, but then, it would be just like a 17-year-old going in and seeing this horrific stuff. And, in the back of her mind, she's like, I can't believe after everything now I've got to deal with this. I normally don't write horror like that. And I'm actually really enjoying it. This third book we open up with a pretty big horrific, kind of setting. And again, it's another element that, River has to deal with. And it's like 18 times scarier than anything that would be in the trophy room. And the cool thing about the trophy room is each case means something. Everything means something, and they have to figure out what it is. But at one point, and I gotta be careful here, because at the end of Fate, so at one point, River goes back to the palace, and some of the things have broken out of the cases. And so the pigs have gotten out of the cases, right? And she always sees them as evil. And so she can hear them as they're trying to go through and do this, and they're making that noise. And it was kind of like an Amityville horror kind of thing. And so that's another horrific, kind of aspect that she's got to deal with. She's got all these other shit she got to deal with. And I just thought that was kind of creepy with the pigs.
It's a great nightmare. And I have to tell you, one of my big dreams, it'll never happen. I mean, the dreams as in stuff that you'd like to do, is to create a really, really cool haunted attraction, not like those that exist right now. And if I had my haunted attraction, I'd have different places that you could go to, and one of them would be the palace. Because I think that is a really neat building.
That would be so cool.
Really neat stuff with there weren't any wisps in the palace, but it seemed like there might be like a negative, dark version of those. When she was walking down the hall, there was some suggestions of some dark, shadowy things in the halls. I don't know if that's what that was supposed to pick up on, but it kind of, I don't know, I saw a slight thing going on there.
Yeah, well, that actually, the reason why there's no wisps is because it's just such a dark, evil place. And the wisps are very light, carefree little spirits. So no wisp go there. But the shadowy essence that is down the hall and stuff like that is a huge spoiler for something that happens later on that River figures out why that happens. But it's like a little teaser for you in the first book. And I don't think I even explained that until like the 5th or 6th book. But it's a huge...
I explained there, but I loved it because I picked up on, that's happening, and that would be a really neat, creepy thing to experience. And then that's even before she gets in the keepsake room or the trophy room. And I don't know, I love that part of the book. I just thought that's, that was like, oh man, this
was fun to write.
Absolutely fun. So I'm looking forward to some more things. I like the other stuff too, but that just really did hit the spot for me. So that was pretty neat. Can I ask you about, and I know this is not touched on a lot. It's only suggested, and people don't talk about witches in the book because every time you say it's like that's witchy, and you got to lower your voice, and you can't really voice that in the ebb. What can you tell us without being too much of a spoiler about witches in the book?
Well, back in the day, they were revered. Everybody loved the witches, but something happened. Probably like, let's see, River was out there for 12 years. I think I don't know, it was like 18, 19 years before this. There was a major event that happened, and something happened, and the crone at the time got angry. And her anger was so uncontrollable, and she cursed someone, which was a big no-no. And because of that, and people witnessed it, everyone suddenly, kind of ostracized the witches, and you don't talk about them. And the fear just kept growing and growing and growing about them, because they do come in the second book. River comes face to face with the crone, and very freaky for her. But the witches, at one time were everyone loved the witches. At some point, the people of the Ebb are going to have to work with the witches, and they don't trust them. They don't like them. They're very, kind of racist against them. And so River has to find a way to kind of force that, we got to use them. I know you don't like them, but, we all need to work here together. I can't really in Fate, there's a full chapter of something that happens at the Haven the same time that Wicked is, oh shit, I can't even say that. I can't say anything, but I do introduce the witches, I introduce the Reaper, and kind of, their point of view. And each book, they'll come more and more and more.
I love that. Well, and by that end, my question is about your own persona as the witch and where that came from. And did that precede this whole series, the whole beginning of the end? What can you share about that?
So I have always had the witch in me. And I don't know when I started calling her the witch. I was young, but I've always had this thing where I always feel like I pulled darkness to me, and it's really hard to explain that. But that's like the dark side of Ryen, right? She's always been there. I don't normally let people see her. I don't, especially where I live. My family, nobody is. We're in the South. Heavy Christian conservatives here. That's not okay. Even now, I have to be very careful with. Just going out and kind of being myself with that. But she's always been there. She's always been in me. I was hesitant in introducing her as myself, like with the brand and stuff like that. I was actually hesitant because she can be very overpowering sometimes. And so when I first entered into Twitter and Instagram, I was very careful about letting her out. I didn't really let anyone see her until I started forming friendships with people, because the writing community is amazing. And then I slowly started letting people see the real me. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Would you? So it definitely way preceded this series.
Yes.
And it's also a persona that you have when you're with other writing that you do.
Yes, I am also working slowly on a series called Dark Trinity, which is, erotic horror, if that is even a genre, fantasy erotic horror.
Yes.
And she would be me living through, in a fantasy kind of setting or whatever. But yeah. She comes out everywhere now. I'm getting better about being comfortable with letting people see her and stuff. My oldest daughter is accepting of her now, but she didn't understand it at first. My son doesn't like, if we, doing something, go out and none of that witchy stuff. Don't do any of that witchy stuff. So I don't do anything crazy around him. But I did tell the warrior that when he leaves for boot camp, I'm coming out of the broom closet fully. I'm not gonna hide it anymore like I do. I'm sorry, Mom, if my mother is watching. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, what do you think about, because in my community where I live here in North Carolina, in Asheville, is it's actually got a wide range of folks. But in the community here, we have a lot of people who would call themselves witches. There's a lot of rangers, plant witches who are more herbalist, and so they're into medicines and that kind of thing. And then we've got people who are Wiccan, so that's their religious belief. And then we got folks who just like to do magic and magic spells. That's a range. That's a pretty big range when you're using the word witch. How do you kind of relate to all of that, and what do you think about magic? And you can spell magic with a K on the end, and it kind of has a different a different concept than just, like a magician.
Yeah.
What's your take on that kind of stuff?
There are so many different types of witches. Being a witch is a personal, sort of journey. I am a very solitary witch, again, because of my surroundings, where I live. I cannot afford to do anything. Also, I was just discovering the witch right before I met the warrior. I had moved out of my parents' house. I was finally at a point where I could start kind of exploring that side, and I started meeting people. I started doing some really crazy shit. And I just was starting to kind of delve into the whole witchcraft sort of scene. And because I had a really good friend that kind of introduced me into, a little bit of spell work and stuff like that. And I was fascinated by it. But then the warrior came in the picture, and, I fell in love. And so I just was going to have my happily ever after. And so I just kind of tucked her away. I was not comfortable showing her to him. I really wasn't. And as the years progressed, though, and you get kids and life, and she just was deep down inside me waiting. And I kept trying to ignore her. I really did. But I don't like being around other witches. I know that sounds really weird. I often am very skeptical of, people that are psychic or, like to read other people and stuff. I'm very skeptical about all this stuff. And we had talked about that, Jason, on the podcast about, being clairvoyant and stuff like that. I'm very skeptical, oddly enough, about all that stuff. I know I can't actually make magic. It's more of a sort of a ritual for me to center myself and kind of open up. I'm very spiritual with my stuff. I don't, I'm not big onto crystals or moon magic or, I would like to be a green witch. I do love working with, I think that'd be fascinating with the herbs and stuff like that, or a kitchen witch, but I'm too lazy for that. And I'll admit it. I don't even like to cook. So, maybe when I was younger, I should have done that. But mine is very spiritual, intuition based, just for myself personally. My dreams are always vivid, always violent. And, I can't even describe, the things that I do. But, everyone's different. Everyone has their path. I'm not Wiccan. It's not a religion for me. I'm not pagan, though I find pagans fascinating. I find the whole thing fascinating. Everyone has something to offer, right? Every single person in that kind of occult community always has something cool to offer. Me personally, though, I don't like to be in settings with other witches. Like I said, I tend to pull darkness to me. It's been kind of an issue. I didn't realize I was doing it until I was an adult. I didn't understand the things that I did. And so I find that when I'm with other witches, I tend to get very negative and kind of defensive. And because I don't know, I can't even describe it. I don't even know how to describe it. But did that answer your question?
I do actually, definitely, and I can relate to it a whole lot because I feel like you, I have a great respect for people who are Wiccan and have that kind of belief system.
Yeah.
It's not one I share, but I respect it.
Yes.
But what I often feel like is it's a symbolic way, as many religions are, about just how to deal with things. To me, it's like I'll get a little more personal about that, but it's like the difference in prayer and meditation.
Yes.
Meditation is about they may look the same, but one's kind of a self-centering and it helps you with that. Whereas prayer is kind of like asking for magic in a way, I think, for something else to happen. So I won't try to put somebody down for that, but my own personal belief is going to be more on how do I center myself and how does it help me, cope? And I feel like, I do a lot of dark stuff and I write a lot of dark stuff and I immerse myself in dark stuff. I'm a positive, good person. So I don't think that darkness equals evil or bad. I think
no, it doesn't.
I play with those words a lot, and I love writing about it. And I'm fascinated by it. But in terms of actually like what we do, I don't think it equates. And I don't know if that's the same sort of thing that you're talking about as well or not. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I respect everyone's right to do whatever religion they want. I don't care. I mean, honestly, I have a friend that's a Satanist. Now, I don't believe in playing with dark stuff like that. And a lot of times, like you said, I play with the words darkness and all those kind of words when I'm writing. But I also talk as myself as being dark, not like that though, because I get a lot of people, referencing me to demons or anything negative like that. They always mistake me, because I'm a witch, as being into all that, dark evil stuff. And I don't believe you should play with it. But my friend, who's a very good friend, is a Satanist. And she kind of explained to me how that whole thing works. And I totally respect her for it. If it makes her happy, she is probably the nicest person you would ever meet. I don't know why she does that. I don't know what the pool is for that to her, because I don't really feel comfortable talking about that, because I believe that if you invite evil into your life, it will stay. And I have to be very careful with that. But yeah, no, everyone has a right to do whatever they want, I guess, as long as you're nice and have compassion and, treat your mama good.
Got points for that one.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom. No, I agree totally. I think it is about compassion, and that's kind of a guiding point right there. Is like, how much do you, how selfish are you? How much do you are open up to other things there? That's really a great way to kind of wrap this up. I feel like, Jason, I don't know if you're there, if we had any other questions, but if we want to kind of put a tail on the end of this whole episode here and maybe invite people. I don't know, is there a way for people to view this later and then add comments or put questions that we could respond to?
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. So this will be live on our YouTube channel. It should stay up there. Sometimes the processing takes a little while, but as soon as the link goes available, I'll share that on our social media. So if people want to leave questions and they've watched this, we can go back and visit them and respond to that as well. So if you missed out on this particular one, and we're going to be doing these, I think, weekly or bi-weekly, I'm not sure, but fairly often. So yeah, they can do that, or they can catch up with us on Twitter, Facebook, wherever they happen to hang out, and ask any questions they have. As for that, so this is a 10-book series that you're working on. At this point, it'll probably be like 30 by the time you're finished. But so I got two questions for you to kind of wrap it up. The first one is, since you're so much of a pantser, how much do you actually know about how it all ends? Are you going to be like a Rowling who claims that she knew the end from the very beginning and was just trying to get there? Or are you blowing smoke on us and you're publisher and you really have no idea where you're going?
I've said it before, I've got this big poster board on my wall, and I got all the books laid out because I have all the titles and stuff like that. And there's sticky notes, different color sticky notes under it, of points that I have to make. Like I know what has to happen to get to the end, and it's not going to be like this magical happily ever after ending either. In fact, the 10th book, it really should be 9 books, because the 10th book is an entire battle scene. And I know that sounds really weird, but the 10th book is the entire, it's the craziest thing you're ever going to read. I know like 13 points I have to get there, no matter what. I have to do these things to get there. I know what has to happen to do for River to do what she's got to do. But how I get there, I still don't know. I honestly don't know. I discovered that big thing about her today. So, I am only on the 3rd book, and there are so many books, but I know how it should end, but I don't know if it's going to end like that. And I am going to write other books. I am writing the history book of the Ebb. I am writing along with this in a way that it's, I always think of it like I'm going to give a book to someone to study, like a textbook or something, to say, okay, this is how you study it. But it is in the third voice that we talked about, like I'm talking to. It's kind of like storyteller point of view. But I am writing that book, and at some point I will write the Brotherhood Codex, and maybe the 4 history tombs of the, oh shit, I can't even say that. Just gonna leave that there. What was the second question?
At some point you'll have, because I think we've announced already, or at least we've hinted at, that there's a couple side stories that we're gonna put out in some other mediums, possibly like a graphic novel or something like that. So you're working on those as well.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you're very, very busy. It sounds like you have the bones, at least, of the series together.
Yes.
So I guess a good way to send it off is to go ahead and tease the 3rd book, which should be coming out in 2020.
In the fall, yes. The 3rd book, I I don't know what to say too much about. River's angry at this point. Okay, and people that read Fate understand what I'm saying. She's really angry. Again, everyone is hoping for a hero. They're expecting her to come in and save the ebb. But by the third book, River's really pissed off. And it could be a mix between her age. You know, she's got a lot thrown at her. She's married now. She's fixing to have her 18th birthday. Something big happens then, something traumatic. And she's really pissed off by this point. So, you know, River's not nice anymore. I mean, she really isn't at this point that, you know, and I did tweet out, so I will say it, you know, there's the tweet where she, you know, stabs her mom in the chest because her mom and her have some pretty big fights in Fate. And so she does stab her mom. So that's, you know, River's pissed off. She's pissed off in the third book. And, you know, but I do a lot of stuff to her. I mean, she, you know, her and Wolf still have issues. You know, he still wants her to be the little fair and stay home and let him do all the big stuff. So she still has to fight against that. And, you know, I do. Go ahead.
I did one real basic question that I keep asking, and so I feel kind of stupid asking this question. If there's one name or word that covers the people in the ebb, affairs, is that non-gender, or is that gender specific, or is there another word that actually would encompass everybody in the ebb?
No, it's all based on where they're from. It's all based on, they don't say, or, you know, River always thinks of them as people.
Humans are in the outside, and then you've got
they've always been separate, because that actually does come up with River, because someone else asks her, you know, you have all these different sort of gender things, you know, what are the people called or whatever, and that actually does come up because they just are always so, I'm a fair, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female, and then, you know, I'm a maid, or, you know, the maids, they can't be away from the sea very long. So, you know, that's just a fun little fact about them. But the fairs, they're the most common, I guess you could say, out of everybody. There's not as many witches as there are fairs, but the maids are the biggest clan. But at some point, River does say, you know, what are they called?
Nice. Good. Thanks. Okay.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good spot. So if nobody's read River yet, then go do it, because you're definitely missing out. It's a killer book. Starts off a very powerful series, and I can honestly say I've never read anything in the world like this series. This one's special. So it was easy. Dawn Hosmer is responsible for bringing this to the world. She
is
essentially threw the book at me and said that you have to read this, and you can't let this one go by, and she was right. So I encourage everyone to check that out. And thanks for
I enjoyed it. I love your questions, David.
Oh,
amazing.
Thanks. Well, thanks for answering them. It was a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. So everybody have a good one, and we'll meet back here. Well, we'll have our live broadcast on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Our cocktail hour.
We'll have the whole crew and drinks. So if anybody wants to pop in, we have a special guest with us for that one.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
He's a big fan of Gestalt Media and what we've been doing. He's done a lot to keep us going in the early days. A lot of promotion, a lot of support for us. So he'll be on, and he'll be asking us whatever he's got on his mind. I guess I have no idea what he's got planned, but it should be fun.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks. It's been fun.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Bye.